for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
You know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes. Okay, my shoes down.
Watch out.
And there you have the sounds from Saturday, July 13th, 2024, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Welcome to a very special edition of Southpaws. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'll be your host today. So I did not have that on my bingo card whatsoever, that somebody was going to take a pot shot at Donald Trump, number one. Number two, that the bullet would nick his ear. Well, it's actually BBC is reporting that what it was a piece of the teleprompter was shot, a piece of that apparatus, and a piece of glass flew and hit Trump in the ear. Now, there have been photos of, you can see the bullet whizzing by, but BBC definitely reporting that it was a piece of glass that had struck Trump's ear and caused it to bleed. And, of course, now Trump trying to gain sympathy by wearing what looks to be a very large bandage on his ear. Not a bandage, but more like a non-stick pad on his ear that you would put on with athletic tape. So there you go, folks. Donald Trump. I'm just going to be honest with you here today. Do I think this was staged? Based on everything that I've seen, yeah. Secret Service wouldn't let somebody get that close. They really wouldn't. I've been through Secret Service procedures when I was covering Barack Obama signing the Farm Bill back in the 2010s. So I've been through those procedures. The Secret Service is not careless when it comes to those procedures. Oh, no way. They said the building where the shooter wasn't in our perimeter. But here's the thing, and we'll get to that here too, is that the building that the shooter climbed up on was where all the cops were huddled. That was the stationing point for all the police that was there, including the FBI, Secret Service, and whatever. So for them to say, well, it was just this, no, not really. So there's something more going on. I hate to be the bearer of conspiracy theories, but I'm sorry, based on all the things, Trump getting up after he was shot, getting up, putting his fist in the air and yelling, fight, yeah, that was staged. The crowd not running for their lives when they heard gunshots, instead just sitting in place like bumps on a log. They were targets. You know, that's absolutely true. Nobody ran and fled for their lives. I'm sorry, if I hear a gunshot anywhere that I'm at, or I hear a series of gunshots, the only thing you're going to see of me is a vapor trail. because I'm going to get out of there as fast as I can. That's what smart people do. Now, could they have been in shock? Yeah, possibly. I mean, like I said, nobody had this on their bingo card, at least nobody that I know. Never would have thought this was going to happen, but it did. And as a matter of fact, we're going to spend a little bit of time right now on the shooter. So let's talk about the shooter here. I have this story. This is Tom MacArthur, Tom Bateman, and Bernd de Boosman writing for the BBC News. This is based out of both London and Pennsylvania. This is dated July 14th, so the day after the assassination attempt took place. The FBI has named the man who shot at Donald Trump during a campaign rally as Thomas Matthew Crooks. Crooks is alleged to have opened fire while Trump was addressing a crowd in Butler, Pennsylvania, leaving one audience member dead, 2 others badly injured. The 20-year-old kitchen worker was shot dead at the scene by a Secret Service sniper, according to officials. In a statement, the FBI said Crooks was the subject involved in the assassination attempt on Trump and that an active investigation was underway. Thomas Crooks had not been carrying ID, so investigators used DNA and biometrics to identify him, according to the FBI. He was from Bethel Park in Pennsylvania, about 43 miles from the site of the attempted assassination. He graduated in 2022 from Bethel Park High School with a $500 prize for maths and science, according to a local newspaper. Crooks worked in a local nursing home kitchen just a short drive away from his home, according to the BBC. State voter records show that he was a registered Republican, according to U.S. media. That is very true. Now, what is the subject of concern here? He is also reported to have donated $15 to the liberal campaign group Act Blue in 2021. Well, I've seen the FEC records. Thomas Crooks is not that uncommon of a name. It's more common than you think it is, because there was Thomas Crooks in California, pretty much in all the states. I looked at the FEC records myself, the Federal Elections Commission. And this Thomas Crooks said he was from Pittsburgh. So I think it's 2 different people, if you want my honest opinion. According to U.S. media reports, Crooks was wearing a T-shirt from Demolition Ranch, a YouTube channel known for its guns and demolition content. The channel has millions of subscribers featuring videos on different guns and explosive devices, and a very right-wing stance on that YouTube account. As a matter of fact, several media had talked to some of Crooks' classmates, and they said, oh yeah, his politics were definitely right-wing. There were Trump signs in the yard of his parents in the past, so there you go. So, full-on Trump supporter MAGA. Well, why did he do it? We'll get to that in just a little bit here. Law enforcement officials believe the weapon used to shoot at Donald Trump was purchased by Crooks' father, the Associated Press news agency reported. Speaking on condition of anonymity, 2 officers told the AP that Crooks' father bought a weapon at least 6 months ago. The day after the shooting, law enforcement sources also told CBS, the BBC's U.S. partner, that suspicious devices were found in Crooks' vehicle. And they found a remote by his body that was used. It's a remote that's used to detonate fireworks. So what he had in mind, I'm not sure. According to CBS, the suspect had a piece of commercially available equipment that appeared capable of initiating the devices. Again, that would be that remote control. Bomb technicians were called to the scene to secure and investigate the devices. Having established Crooks' identity, police and agencies are investigating his motive. Kevin Rojek, FBI Pittsburgh special agent in charge, said at a briefing Saturday night, quote, "We do not currently have an identified motive," end of quote. Rojek added that the inquiry into what took place could last for months and investigators would work tirelessly to identify what Crooks' motive was. Speaking to CNN, Crooks' father, Matthew Crooks, said he was trying to figure out what the hell is going on, end of quote, but would, quote, wait until I talk to law enforcement, end of quote, before speaking about his son. Police sealed off the road to the house where Crooks lived with his parents, CBS News reported. A neighbor told CBS that officials evacuated her in the middle of the night with no warning. Bethel Park Police said there was a bomb investigation surrounding Crooks' home. Access to the area remains tightly controlled with police vehicles blocking the roads. Only residents have been allowed in or out. Law enforcement sources told CBS that they believe there was some degree of planning ahead of the shooting. How much time was spent in that planning, however, remains the subject of an ongoing investigation. Police said that he acted alone but are continuing to investigate whether he was accompanied to the rally. As mentioned, one person was killed, 2 others injured in the shooting. All 3 victims were adult men and audience members, according to CBS News. One witness told the BBC that he had seen a man believed to be Crooks with a rifle on the roof of a building before Trump was shot at. Video footage obtained by TMZ shows the moment the shooting began. The assailant opened fire with an AR-style rifle, according to CBS News. Law enforcement sources also told CBS that he was reported by a bystander and identified as a suspicious person by police, but that officers lost track of him before the shooting began. However, the FBI says it did not immediately know what type of firearm the gunman used or how many shots were fired. A Secret Service sniper returned fire and killed the gunman, the agency said. Footage later showed armed officers approaching a body on the roof of the building. So there's what's happening there. That's what happened, at least that's the reporting the day after the assassination attempt. Now, they did say that he was seen with a scope earlier, that Crooks was, and that apparently he had been approached by law enforcement, but they let him go. Or at least that's what the Secret Service is saying. So I don't know if they're just trying to pass blame on to local law enforcement or what. There was also a report that a police officer confronted Crooks on the roof, but that Crooks turned the weapon toward the officer, and the officer either backed down, or there was one report that said the officer fell off the roof. Now, if the officer had indeed fallen off the roof, we would have heard that there was another injury based on that. But since there wasn't, I'm going to assume that he just backed right off completely. Whether it was to get more backup or what, who knows. But, here's the funny thing about this. It's not really funny, it's more of an ironic thing. Funny ironic. Is that with everything going on, now with this assassination attempt that took place, now there's been calls from both sides of the aisle to tone down the rhetoric. Here's what's not being brought out by the media, and you're only going to hear it here on this show. Who's the side, which side was the one that started heating up the rhetoric? Because it wasn't the left, it was the right. It was the maggots. Plain and simple, period, end of story. It was the maggots that have heated up the rhetoric for the last 9 years. Oh, and it was Trump. Trump's the one that stokes this. Oh, I could kill somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and my ratings would go up. Punch that guy in the face. Kick that son of a bitch's ass. I'll pay for your attorney. Stuff like that. And it's documented. It's documented on videotape. And people still don't believe it. Those people are brainwashed. They're in the cult 45. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, gulp, gulp, gulp. I've said it before and I'll say it again. They're worse than the Jim Jones followers. 100 times worse. Because they take everything according to gospel by Trump. And that's what it is. Oh, it was divine intervention that he wasn't hit. No, it was the wind. Apparently there was a wind that affected the targeting, and I tell you what, if that bullet had been 2 inches over, we'd be talking a lot differently on this show, and we'd be talking about Trump's death on this show. But Trump has survived. We are recording this show on Thursday, July 18th, 2024. He is apparently going to be speaking tonight, giving the keynote speech at the RNC Republican National Committee in Milwaukee. The town that Donald Trump said was a bad town. He said it. He's on tape. For all the things that Donald Trump has said, and like I said, he has stoked violence. It has been Donald Trump stoking the violence. It hasn't been the left. I got into an argument with somebody saying, well, it really does need to be both sides. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull that up on my phone here. And I was going to say we were hoping to have Jack Prince on the show, but he's not going to be available until much later. And unfortunately, I don't have available time later today to have him on the air. So that's why I'm doing the show by myself today. But it really just goes to show you how people have been reacting to this. Again, let me reiterate right now. Thomas Matthew Crooks, white, male Republican with an AR-15 shot Trump. Don't blame the left. The left didn't do it. The right did it. And why did he do it? Well, I got a screenshot of his Instagram account before it got yanked down. Let me read what it says on his Instagram account on the front page of it. Because this is the truth, folks. This is what happened. Basically said he's hunting pedos. Yep, here it is. Thomas Matthew Crooks. This is from his Instagram. He had 0 posts, 10 followers, and following 77 people. It says underneath his name, praise the Lord in my quest to end Epstein's evil empire. Pennsylvania born and bred. So he was out hunting pedophiles. And he identified Donald Trump as a pedophile. There's your motive for the shooting right there. That simple phrase, that simple sentence there. Praise the Lord in my quest to end Epstein's evil empire. Now, according to the FBI and Secret Service, they've already broke into his phone using technology from Israel, which has been very problematic as far as rights go, civil rights. He apparently was also seeking out images of Joe Biden, of several other people, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. So it looked like he was targeting a whole bunch of people. He just got to Trump first because Trump was in his backyard, almost literally in his backyard. So yeah, Trump shooter was on a quest to end Epstein's evil empire. It's right there. It's right there on his Instagram. Like I said, his Instagram has been taken down now since the shooting. But it was there. Doesn't change anything. And why the media isn't talking about that is beyond me. Yeah, it could have been faked. I highly doubt it. Not that soon after the shooting. I don't think so. Anyways, so it's been the right that's been stoking all this hostility, stoking this anger for years and years and years. Let me give you examples. The Adam Parkomenko wrote this on Twitter. Said, when right-wing scum tried to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, Republicans made excuses. When a lunatic beat Paul Pelosi with a hammer, they made jokes. And when Donald Trump sent a mob to attack the Capitol, they made up lies. Don't lecture us about condemning violence. Bingo. Right there it is. Beautiful. Right on the money. And I'm just going to say it the way that it is. It's the truth. It's the truth. Brian Tyler Cohen posted this on Facebook. It was Republicans who went after Mike Pence. It was a Republican who went after Donald Trump. It wasn't an illegal immigrant. It wasn't an LGBTQ member. It wasn't an African American. It wasn't a drag queen reading a book. The violence comes from the right. And very true. It is. It's the right. The right does this. Right here, another meme that I found on Facebook. It shows a picture of Donald Trump, again, holding up his fist after he's been the victim of an assassination attempt, holding up his fist and yelling, "Fight." And somebody took a picture of it. This is Donald Trump screaming, "Fight, fight, fight," after just being shot at by a radicalized young white Republican male with an AR-15, which took the life of another Republican male. Just who is he telling people to fight? In this case, it's his base, platform legislation, and his legacy of gun advocacy, mental health opposition, dehumanization, and violent rhetoric. He's no hero here. He's the source. He is who we will fight at the polls in November in order to save this nation. And, yeah, like I said, the kid shot another Republican, the guy, the volunteer firefighter. His name's Corey Comparator. If you think Corey Comparator is a hero for blocking the bullet from hitting his daughter, you might want to look at some of his posts. Oh, wait, the family wiped their social media account. But we do have screenshots here from, it looks like his Twitter account. Here's one. He's responding to a story by the Babylon Bee that says, "Trump vows that if elected, he will legalize running over bicyclists." Corey Comparator, the guy that was shot and killed at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, responded, "Deal." Another post, again on Twitter, or X, I should say, because it's not Twitter anymore. Corey Comparator says, this is November 4th, 2023. Why? Because he can fill a diner with his supporters? I saw Hillary fill a high school gym once with her reporters. So then, underneath it was a post by Piers Morgan. Says, when are these Palestinians going to live when the war is over? Where so many of their homes are being destroyed, does Israel have an answer? Does it care? And underneath it is a news article from Sky News that says over 1 million people have fled their homes in Gaza, with many following Israeli warnings to evacuate to the south. Corey Comparator's response to that, this is October 28th, 2023. He says, quote, "They'll get over it. The Japanese did," end of quote. A post from January 3rd of this year is a photo of global warming activists standing on ice with nooses around their necks. And somebody asked, "You see these activists doing this in your town, what do you do?" The following day on January 4th, Corey Comparator said, "Go ice kicking. I mean skating. Yeah, skating." So there you have it, folks. That's the victim of the shooting at Butler, Pennsylvania, the person that died. I'm not feeling sorry for anybody there. I'm sorry. You had a bunch of lunatics in one place. They're all lunatics. All of them. Every single one of them. Sorry if I don't feel any sympathy. I really don't. You know who I feel sympathy toward? I feel sympathy toward people who are trying to put food on their table, keep the lights on, keep the heat going, keep clothes on their children. The ones that are starving to death, the seniors who have to decide whether they can afford their medication or afford what they can eat. Because the rich are destroying this country. Rich people and Republicans have destroyed this country. Period. End of story. That's who I have sympathy for. As a matter of fact, I want to get to that. Let me get this. Here's what I said a couple days ago. I have to wonder about the mental acuity of some people who claim to be on the left. Seriously, people need to get out of here with this both sides crap. And that's not the words that I used. I'm being nice today. I'm going to try not to swear. And somebody had posted, we were talking about Trump's assassination attempt and how people reacted to it by not running for their lives. A lot of them sat there like bumps on a log. They didn't even duck down. Trump ducked down. The Secret Service piled on top of him. Some people behind him ducked down. A lot of people didn't. So this person named Noelle, I'm not going to give her full name, said, "You never know how somebody will react to an experience like this. It's possible he's still in shock and going about his life like it's a normal day. I was randomly mugged at gunpoint with my dad on a Wednesday afternoon 2 weeks ago. We were physically assaulted. My dad was pushed to the ground, kicked. I was hit in the face. Luckily, no major injuries and only one wallet stolen. The point is, I went about my normal life the next day. I was definitely in shock and didn't really know how to process what happened, especially since there wasn't a major injury. It was shocking. We talked about it, but I wasn't wallowing for days trying to make sense of it all. I just kept moving because it made me feel a little more normal. Everyone deals with trauma differently. I'm not a Trump supporter, but you just really don't know how you'll react in these scenarios. And feeding this narrative with really poor memes is only furthering the divide, silos, and hatred in our country. This is the sentence that got me. She said, Noel said, at some point the extreme right and extreme left start to look eerily similar, which is bullshit. Sorry, I cussed. Can't help it. I responded to Noel saying, the extreme left agenda, a living wage for everyone, single-payer universal health care, free public education, including college, clean air and water, tax the rich. The extreme right agenda, make women brood mayors for the state, dismantle the Constitution, jail dissenters. Yeah, they look eerily similar. Bullshit. Noel responded, Darren, it's not the agendas, it's the attitudes that are eerily similar, an inability to listen to anyone with even a semblance of an opposing view. That is dangerous no matter the agenda. You're also cherry-picking agenda items. We on the left also have political policies and agendas that are causing deterioration, confusion, and increased crime in our system as well, whether we choose to admit it. I said, increased crime? Get the f*** out of here with that bullshit. And then she started about some of the left policies, the centrist left policies, not actual leftists, of reducing bonds and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the extreme left doing it. That's the center left doing it. Sorry. You want to know what would fight crime in this country? Let me tell you what would fight crime in this country. Like shoplifting, muggings, theft, stuff like that. You want to know what would stop it? Living wages. Living wages. At minimum, $15 an hour, right? More like $24 an hour if we're talking today's money. What do you expect people to do when they can't afford anything? Do you expect them to just sit there and starve to death? That's why if I see somebody taking food out of a grocery store, I'm not saying a word. Sorry, I'm not. They're trying to feed their family. Somebody shoplifts a can of baby formula for their child. I'm not going to say a word for it. Not going to say a word about it. No. Sorry. It's to a point. We need to do something. This is unsustainable. The way the system is right now is absolutely unsustainable, and it will change one way or another. Either through evolution or revolution. It's just what you as the public want to decide happens, as John Kennedy said. You know, those who make evolution impossible will make revolution inevitable. Again, it's the rich. It's the rich, it's the rich, it's the rich. And there's no sense in talking to the right. They're brainwashed. You can't get through to them. The only way you get through to them is to embarrass them. That's the only way you get through them. You can't talk to them. It's ridiculous. As a matter of fact, I want to get to this story here. This is Stephen Greenhouse, and I forget who he was writing for. He has an article updated July 16th, and this has to do with Teamsters President Sean O'Brien speaking at the Republican National Convention earlier this week. Says, it's not every day that you see a Teamster walk a tightrope, but on Monday night, Sean O'Brien, president of the mighty Teamsters Union, was doing just that at the Republican National Convention. On one hand, O'Brien was seeking to cozy up to Donald Trump, eager to stay on his good side in case he wins the presidency in November. But on the other hand, O'Brien gave a speech that was no doubt anathema to many Republican bigwigs and business owners. He said that far too many greedy corporations exploit their workers and that America's laws make it far too difficult for workers to unionize and get contracts that lift their pay and benefits. One can easily imagine O'Brien boasting afterward that he was Daniel in the lion's den, speaking truth to pro-corporate power. But O'Brien's decision to appear at the convention stirred furious criticism within the labor movement, especially when many union leaders insist that Joe Biden is the most pro-union president since Franklin D. Roosevelt. Some Teamsters slammed O'Brien's plan to appear at the convention. They feared that he was unwittingly letting the Trump campaign turn him into a show horse, a trophy that they could hold up to make the case that Trump and the Republican Party have the Teamsters seal of approval and are thus true friends of America's workers and unions, despite the Trump presidency's many anti-worker and anti-union moves. John Palmer, vice president at large of the 1.3 million member Teamsters Union, slammed O'Brien's decision to speak at the convention. In an op-ed, Palmer wrote that it, quote, normalizes and makes palatable the most anti-union party and president I've seen in my lifetime. It is unconscionable for any labor leader to lend an air of legitimacy to a candidate and a political party, neither of which can be said to have done or can be expected to do anything to improve the lives of the workers we are pledged to represent. End of quote. O'Brien, a combative former Boston truck driver who became Teamsters president in 2022, certainly knows that during his 4 years as U.S. president, Trump and his administration repeatedly undermined the interests of workers and unions. Trump didn't raise a finger to increase the abysmally low $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage. Trump rolled back regulations that protected coal miners and farm workers. Trump fought hard to repeal Obamacare, a move that would have pushed up medical costs and taken away health coverage for millions of working families. Trump appointed fiercely anti-union officials to the National Labor Relations Board who moved in many ways, large and small, to make it harder for workers to unionize. Trump's 3 hard-right appointees to the Supreme Court have also been consistently anti-union, meaning scabs. I'll call it what it is, scabs. Trump once said that if Congress passed it, he would sign a national right-to-work bill, a move that would badly weaken unions by letting workers opt out of paying union dues. Not stopping there, Trump once urged union members not to pay union dues. How can a union survive and fight for higher wages if its members don't pay dues? Early this year, O'Brien began flirting with Trump, having invited him to speak to the union's executive board. James Kerbeam, chairman of the Teamsters National Black Caucus, denounced O'Brien's move and called Trump a, quote, a scam masquerading as a pro-union advocate after doing everything in his power to destroy the very fabric of unions, end of quote. In his Monday night speech, O'Brien paid no heed to Trump's anti-labor record. His focus seemed to be on flattering Trump with the hope that Trump, if elected, would be nicer to the Teamsters and to all of labor. O'Brien's other objective was to educate Republicans and a national audience about the injustices and tough times that millions of workers face. I'm going to stop right there for a minute. This is the same strategy that the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America did in Michigan when Rick Snyder ran for governor. They basically chose him as their candidate. How did that end? We got right to work in Michigan when the head of the Michigan House called the head of the Carpenters Union and said, quote unquote, you're f***ed. So that's how that works out, folks. You're f***ed if you think you're going to get through to these violent conservatives. O'Brien said, quote, I see American workers taken for granted, end of quote. With a powerful and at times angry voice, he proceeded to denounce corporate elites, including Amazon, saying, quote, their loyalty is to the balance sheet at the expense of the American worker, end of quote. O'Brien argued that the nation's labor laws were pathetically weak. Quote, Americans vote for a union but can never get a union contract, end of quote. He added, quote, companies fire workers who try to join unions and hide behind toothless laws that are meant to protect working people but are manipulated to benefit corporations. This is economic terrorism, end of quote. As part of his tightrope walk, O'Brien told a hugely partisan maggot convention that the Teamsters, quote, will create an agenda and work with a bipartisan coalition ready to accomplish something real for the American worker, end of quote. As O'Brien talked, the crowd was at times quiet, uneasy, but it roared with approval when he lauded Trump, saying, quote, Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices, and I think we can all agree whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB, end of quote. Yeah. In his speech, O'Brien also praised Senator Josh Hawley, Republican representing Missouri, noting that Hawley had walked on several Teamster picket lines just as Biden joined a United Auto Workers picket line last fall. O'Brien lauded Hawley for criticizing C-suite executives for selling out the U.S. by shutting factories and gutting American jobs. O'Brien said, quote, "The Teamsters and the GOP may not agree on many issues, but a growing group has shown the courage to sit down and consider points of view that aren't funded by big money think tanks," end of quote. Teamsters officials defended O'Brien's decision to speak at the convention, noting that the union has not endorsed a presidential candidate and that O'Brien sought invitations to speak at both the Republican and Democratic conventions. The Democrats have not invited him, at least not yet. And at this point, why would they? He's sided with the enemy by going and talking to him. That's period. We'll talk about that in just a minute here as it affects a Pacifica-affiliated show. Cara Dennis, a Teamsters spokesperson, said rank-and-file Teamsters would dictate any endorsement decision. She noted that the union has held member roundtables with Trump and Biden and conducted town halls at roughly 300 local unions to discuss issues and candidates. She said, quote, "We are getting our members' input in a variety of ways and using that to inform whatever decision is made," end of quote. And apparently the decision that the Teamsters is going to make is no endorsement for the first time in about 30 or 40 years. 40 years ago when the Teamsters were heavily Republican. I've been a constant critic of the Teamsters 40, 50 years ago when they were siding with Republicans. The Teamsters aren't a real union, let me just tell you. And I tell you what, same with the Michigan Carpenters. When you support Republicans, you are basically scabs. The vast majority of the nation's major unions have endorsed Biden, and it would be a sizable blow to him if the Teamsters make no endorsement or back Trump. Many Democrats are no doubt fuming that O'Brien is playing footsie with Trump, even though Trump and his party opposed what was long the Teamsters' number one legislative priority, the Butch-Lewis Emergency Pension Relief Act, a bill that devotes $86 billion in federal funds to rescuing the pensions of over 2 million union members, including over 400,000 Teamsters. After the Democrat-controlled House passed the bill in 2019, Trump and the GOP-controlled Senate did nothing to advance it. After Biden was elected, he successfully pushed to enact the Teamsters-backed legislation. The House approved it with Democrats voting 235-0 in favor, Republicans voting overwhelmingly against 29 to 168. The Butch-Lewis Act was passed in 2021 as part of the American Rescue Plan that not one Republican senator voted for. On Monday morning, O'Brien spoke to Republican delegates from Massachusetts and criticized Biden for failing to deliver on some things, such as the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which would make it easier for workers to unionize. Biden pressed hard for the bill, which is the AFL-CIO's top legislative priority, but unanimous GOP opposition prevented it from overcoming a Senate filibuster. In what seems like wishful thinking, O'Brien dismissed suggestions that it would be impossible to pass the PRO Act with Trump in the White House. All in all, O'Brien's showing at the RNC was a huge gamble. He seemed to dream that he could somehow persuade Trump and the GOP to stop being fiercely anti-union and often anti-worker as well. But maybe his hard-hitting speech could lead to some incremental change. I doubt that. More likely, O'Brien has done Trump a huge favor by seemingly giving his union seal of approval to the GOP, helping Trump woo blue-collar workers, a pivotal voting bloc that could help ensure a Trump victory, especially in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. If Trump wins and if his coattails bring GOP control of the House and Senate, that, despite O'Brien's wishes, could be a disaster for labor unions. That would mean more anti-union appointees to the NLRB and Supreme Court, more efforts to kill regulations that protect workers, more years of failing to pass the PRO Act, and more tough times for America's unions. O'Brien's appearance at the Republican convention won't prevent that. And as a matter of fact, I want to get to this here. Rick Smith, the host of the Rick Smith Show that you can hear on many Pacifica radio stations across this country, the man that brought to us the Labor History in Two, the segment that airs on a lot of Pacifica affiliates. I aired it when I was running the Pacifica affiliate in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Great audio. Rick Smith, a couple of days ago, posted this to his Twitter account. He said, honest question, does Teamsters President Sean O'Brien proudly standing arm in arm with a union-busting CEO send the wrong message, or is this an amazing organizing opportunity to change Dana White's heart and mind? Yeah, Sean O'Brien's got his arm around Dana White, the head of UFC, which is now owned by TKO. TKO now owns the UFC and WWE through merger. Rick Smith posted this on his Twitter. Because of that tweet and my criticism of Teamster SOB speaking at the RNC, my longest Teamster sponsor of 19 years has ended their sponsorship. Doing what is right and speaking truth to power is costly. God, don't I know that, because I was the victim of it at WPRR. Please help us make up for this devastating loss. Click here, and then he's got a PayPal link right there to donate. Folks, this is what we're fighting. We are fighting with truth to power. We're not going out there saying kill, 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 beat somebody up, kick their ass. We're not doing that. We're out there trying to educate people, trying to tell you, if you vote this son of a bitch in named Trump, you're going to lose it all. You're going to lose your Social Security. You're going to lose your Medicare. You're going to lose your Medicaid. You're going to lose it all. You're going to lose all your rights. Women will be forced to stay pregnant, even if it kills them. No more free speech. No more free press. No more freedom of religion. You'll be going to Christian churches every Sunday. What'll be next? Will they force businesses to close down on Sunday? Reenact blue laws in this country? Because you can guarantee that's what they're going to try and do. You heard it here first. You'll only hear it on this show in the way that I say it. Because I'm blunt. I don't care who I offend. Ugh. And I want to mention real quick, you know what? I've got a better one. Let's go on to our next segment here.
Stop. Hammer time.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely hammer time. It is time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. And this week I am nominating actor Jack Black for throwing his partner Kyle Gass under the bus. Tenacious D, which is Jack Black and Kyle Gass, they were in Australia doing a concert there. And it was Kyle Gass's birthday. And this is Sunday. So this is the night after the Trump assassination attempt. And it's Kyle Gass's birthday. So they brought out a big birthday cake for him. And they asked Kyle Gass what he wanted for his birthday, what his birthday wish was. And he said, for better aim. It's a joke, people. It's a fucking joke. Get over it. You know, like Trump says to get over school shootings. It's a joke. Since then, Jack Black has said that Tenacious D, he's basically done with Tenacious D for the future. Future projects have been put on hold, and he's not really sure if he's going to be teaming with Kyle Gass again. So Jack Black basically threw his partner under the bus over a fucking joke. So to Jack Black, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can't help it. You're a centrist. You're too rich and you're too centrist for me, buddy. Let me just tell you. As a matter of fact, I want to get to our next story here. Speaking of centrists and the Democrats. This is Darlene Supperville, Amelia Thompson DeVoe, and Emily Swanson writing for the Associated Press. This is dated July 17th out of Washington. This is a brand new poll that just came out. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you about the poll here. The poll was conducted July 11th through 15th of this year using a sample drawn from NORC's probability-based AmeriSpeak panel, which is designed to be representative of the U.S. population. The poll was of 1,253 adults. The margin of sampling error for all respondents is plus or minus 3.8 percentage points. Here's the story. Nearly two-thirds of Democrats say President Joe Biden should withdraw from the presidential race and let his party nominate a different candidate. That is according to a new poll, sharply undercutting his post-debate claim that average Democrats are still with him, even if some big names are turning on him. The new survey by the AP NORC Center for Public Affairs Research, conducted as Biden works to salvage his candidacy 2 weeks after his debate flop, also found that only about 3 in 10 Democrats are extremely or very confident that he has the mental capability to serve effectively as president, down slightly from 40% in an AP NORC poll in February. The findings underscore the challenges the 81-year-old president faces as he tries to silence calls from within his own party to leave the race and tries to convince Democrats that he's the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump. The poll was conducted mostly before Saturday's assassination attempt on Trump at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. It's unclear whether the shooting influenced people's views of Biden, but the small number of poll interviews completed after the shooting provided no early indication that his prospects improved. Meanwhile, as Vice President Kamala Harris receives additional scrutiny amid the talk about whether Biden should bow out, the poll found that her favorability rating is similar to his, but the share of Americans who have an unfavorable opinion of her is slightly lower. The poll provides some evidence that black Democrats are among Biden's strongest supporters, with roughly half in the survey saying that he should continue running, compared to about 3 in 10 white and Hispanic Democrats. Overall, 7 in 10 Americans think Biden should drop out, with Democrats only slightly less likely than Republicans and independents to say that he should make way for a new nominee. 27-year-old Andrew Holcomb of Denver, who is a Democrat, said this, quote, "I do have genuine concerns about his ability to hold the office. I think he's frankly just too old for the job," end of quote. 50-year-old Janie Stapleton, a lifelong Democrat from Walls, Mississippi, held the opposite view, saying Biden is the best candidate for president. People aren't just sour on Biden as they size up their choices this election season. About 6 in 10 Americans want Trump to withdraw, but relatively few Republicans are in that camp. As for Biden, younger Democrats are especially likely to want to see him bow out and to say they're dissatisfied with him. 3/4 of Democrats under the age of 45 want Biden to drop out, compared to about 6 in 10 of those who are older. 35-year-old Alexi Mitchell, the civil servant who lives in Virginia, said, quote, "I just feel like these two individuals are a sad choice," end of quote. She identifies as a Democratic-leaning independent, and while she thinks Biden is probably still mentally up to the job, she worries that the past few weeks' unraveling of support makes him a weak candidate no matter what happens next. She said, quote, "If he doesn't have control over his own party, that's a fatal flaw. He's put us in a bad position where Trump might win," end of quote. Despite bullish talk from the Biden campaign heading into the debate, the face-off only left the president in a deeper hole. Democrats are slightly more likely to say they're dissatisfied with Biden as their nominee now that they were before his halting performance. About half are dissatisfied, an uptick from about 4 in 10 in an AP NORC poll from June. By contrast, most Republicans, about 6 in 10, came out of the debate very or somewhat satisfied with Trump as their candidate. Too few interviews were conducted after the assassination attempt to provide a clear indication of whether Republicans or Americans overall have rallied further around Trump since then. David Parrott, a Democrat from Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, was willing to give Biden the benefit of the doubt given the president's age, but he still voiced concerns about a potential second term. The 58-year-old retiree said, quote, "I don't know if he can make it another 4 years or not. Shouldn't he be sitting in his beach house taking it easy?" End of quote. All of the recent churn has left Americans much more likely to think Trump is capable of winning the 2024 election than is Biden, 42 to 18%. About a quarter thought the two men were equally capable of winning. Even Democrats are relatively dour about their party's prospects come November. Only about a third of Democrats believe Biden is more capable of winning than is Trump. About 3 in 10 think the two are equally capable of winning. 16% say victory is more likely to go to the Republican. By contrast, Republicans are overwhelmingly convinced that Trump is in the best position to win. Trump also has the edge on Biden when Americans consider who is most capable of handling a crisis, 38 to 28%. And people are about equally divided on which candidate has the better vision for the country, with 35% saying Biden, 34% saying Trump. For all of the disenchantment Biden is up against, the president insists it's not too late to turn things around. saying past presidents have come back from a deficit at this stage in the campaign. In an interview Tuesday with BET News, he said many voters haven't focused yet, adding, quote, "The point is we're just getting down to game time right now," end of quote. The poll did offer a bright spot for Biden. 40% of adults say he's more honest than Trump, while about 2 in 10 think the opposite. Most Democrats, around 6 in 10, say Vice President Harris would make a good president, while 22% think not. 2 in 10 don't know enough to say. The poll showed that 43% of U.S. adults have a favorable opinion of her, 48% have a unfavorable opinion. Somewhat more have a negative view of Biden, about 6 in 10 Americans. The survey was conducted before Trump selected freshman Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio as his running mate. It showed that for most Americans, Vance is still an unknown. 6 in 10 don't know enough about him to form an opinion. 17% have a favorable view, 22% view him negatively. So there you go, folks. All right, I want to get to a couple of stories here if I can. Good news, we talked about this on last week's show. Here's an update. This is Michael R. Sizak writing for the Associated Press. This is dated July 12th out of New York City. A judge threw out Rudy Giuliani's bankruptcy case on Friday, slamming the former New York City mayor as a recalcitrant debtor who thumbed his nose at the process while seeking to shield himself from a $148 million defamation judgment and other debts. U.S. bankruptcy judge Sean Lane criticized Giuliani for repeated, quote, uncooperative conduct, end of quote, self-dealing, and a lack of transparency. The judge cited failures to comply with court orders, failure to disclose sources of income, and his apparent unwillingness to hire an accountant to go over his books. Lane wrote, quote, such a failure is a clear red flag, end of quote. Dismissing the case ends his pursuit of bankruptcy protection, but it doesn't absolve him of his debts. His creditors can now pursue other legal remedies to recoup at least some of the money they're owed, such as getting a court order to seize his apartments and other assets. Giuliani is now free to also pursue an appeal of the defamation verdict, which arose from his efforts to overturn Republican Donald Trump's 2020 presidential election loss. Lane indicated at a hearing Wednesday that he would probably dismiss the case. Giuliani's lawyer had floated other options to keep the case alive, but agreed ultimately that dismissing it was the best way forward. The dismissal includes a 12-month ban on Giuliani filing again for bankruptcy protection. Lane wrote, quote, transparency into Mr. Giuliani's finances has proven to be an elusive goal. I see no evidence that this will change, end of quote. The judge said among his concerns were that Giuliani funneled his income, including at least $15,000 a month from his now canceled talk radio show, into companies he owned, never reported any income from those entities, failed to disclose that he had started promoting his own Rudy Coffee brand, and was late to disclose a contract he has to write a book. Giuliani spokesperson Ted Goodman, drawing a parallel to what he deemed the grossly unfair defamation case, said Friday that the bankruptcy matter had been, quote, burdened with many of the same voluminous and overly broad discovery requests and other actions, end of quote. Among them, he claimed, were leaks, quote, intended to harm the mayor and destroy his businesses, end of quote. Goodman ascribed political motives to Giuliani's legal troubles, stating without evidence that they were meant to punish him for investigating President Joe Biden's son Hunter and, quote, to deter anyone else from asking questions or getting to the truth, end of quote. He said, nevertheless, they're confident, quote, our system of justice will be restored and the mayor will be totally vindicated, end of quote. Yeah, really. Yeah. Giuliani, a longtime Trump ally, filed for bankruptcy last December, just days after the eye-popping damages award to former Georgia election workers Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Shea Moss. The bankruptcy filing froze collection of the debt. A lawyer for Freeman and Moss accused Giuliani at Wednesday's hearing of using bankruptcy as a, quote, bad faith litigation tactic and a pause button on his woes, end of quote, and urged Lane to dismiss it so they could pursue the damages they were awarded. The women's lawyer, Rachel Strickland, said Friday, quote, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss have already waited too long for justice. We are pleased the court saw through Mr. Giuliani's schemes and put a stop to his abuse of the bankruptcy process. We will begin enforcing our judgment against him ASAP. End of quote. The other people and entities to whom Giuliani owes money wanted to keep the bankruptcy case going with a court-appointed trustee taking control of Giuliani's assets. Well, that ain't going to happen. Here, look at this. In his most recent financial filings in the bankruptcy case, he said he had about $94,000 cash in hand at the end of May, while his company, Giuliani Communications, had about $237,000 in the bank. A main source of income for Giuliani over the past 2 years had been a retirement account with a balance of just over $1 million in May, down from nearly $2.5 million in 2022 after his withdrawals. In May, he spent nearly $33,000, including nearly $28,000 for condo and co-op costs for his Florida and New York City homes. He also spent about $850 on food, $390 on cleaning services, $230 on medicine, $200 on laundry, $190 in vehicles. So there you go. And we definitely want to mention a couple of stories here. Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey, has told several colleagues he will resign from office after he was convicted on bribery charges. Once again, this is a quote I said years ago, and I say it again on this show. Democrats prosecute their criminals. Republicans coddle their criminals. There you go. There's the truth, folks. Period. End of story. A jury found the 70-year-old senator guilty of accepting bribes of gold and cash from 3 New Jersey businessmen and acting as a foreign agent for the Egyptian government. So, among other charges there. So, there you go, folks. All right, and one final story that I want to get to. This is Eric Tucker and Alana Durkin-Richer writing for the Associated Press. This is dated July 17th out of Washington. A judge's stunning decision to dismiss the classified documents case against Donald Trump brought an abrupt halt to what experts have considered the strongest and most straightforward of the prosecutions of Trump, but it's hardly the final word. Special counsel Jack Smith's appeal of U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon's order is expected to tee up a court fight that might reach the U.S. Supreme Court and could result in the reinstatement of the indictment and even conceivably the reassignment of the case to a different judge. Yes, it goes to the 11th Circuit Court first, who is probably going to reinstate the charges and probably toss her from the case, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court. There's no scenario in which a revived prosecution could reach trial before the November election, and it presumably won't take place at all in the event Trump is elected president and orders his Justice Department to dismiss it. Still, Cannon's order ensures many more months of legal wrangling in a criminal case that became snarled over the last year by interminable delays. Nancy Gertner, a former federal judge in Massachusetts who was nominated to the bench by President Bill Clinton, a Democrat, said, quote, "The only good thing about this is that if it is finally a decision, the difficulty with Judge Cannon has been that she has made no decisions. She has simply sat on the case, and since she has made no decisions, there was nothing to appeal." End of quote. The judge's 93-page order held that Smith's selection as special counsel violated the Constitution because he was named to the position directly by Attorney General Merrick Garland and instead of being appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Prosecutors vigorously challenged that argument when it was raised by Trump's lawyers and filed a formal notice of appeal Wednesday to initiate the process. So we will continue following the Trump classified documents case. We'll tell you what the 11th Court decides, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. I'm Darren Gibson. Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.